Have you ever believed something to be true for a long time, but lastly you discover the hidden false about it? Have you ever actually asked yourself the meaning of the round disc, or circular disc, which is placed on the head of Virgin Mary, baby Jesus, and other saints' pictures or idols? Can you believe you may call yourself a Christian but you are in a real pagan church, with a baptized paganism? Did you know Sunday worship existed thousands of years ago before coming of Christ as paganism day of worshipping the sun god? Did you know the Bible frankly foretold pagan sun worshipping of Tammuz and female deity will eventually enter into the Christian church? Can you remember how many times God warned Israelites not to unite with other tribes lest they fall into their false worship? Follow next lesson for origin of Easter and Christmas in paganism. Welcome to today's lesson. A solar deity, also sun god or sun goddess, is a sky deity who represents the sun, or an aspect of it, usually by its perceived power and strength. Solar deities and sun worship can be found throughout most of recorded history in various forms. The sun is sometimes referred to by its Latin name Sol or by its Greek name Helios. The spiritual power from sun is even believed by most African societies than you expect. Today we will look at the origin of sun worship, false trinity, Babylon, and Sunday worship. Satan's religion is always making mankind to worship him through objects of creation rather than worshipping the Creator, just as it is written, "They took the truth of God and turned it into a lie and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator." Romans 1 verse 25. Satan's church had its beginning at Babylon with the construction of the Tower of Babel on the plain of Shinar by the river Euphrates, many generations after the deluge. At the time of the construction of Babylon at the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11 verse 1-4, mankind had multiplied and spoken one language. Cush, who was the son of Ham and grandson of Noah and brother of Egypt, Genesis 10 verse 1 and 6, helped to plan with his son Nimrod, a blueprint by which to rule the world of humanity through a wicked counterfeit religion. Nimrod was the originator of sun worship and founder of Babylon. A Bible translation called the Targum says, Nimrod became a mighty man of sin, a murderer of innocent men, and a rebel before the Lord. The beginning of Nimrod's evil plan had its origin at Babel, which was later known as Babylon. This city of Babylon with a tower whose top may reach unto heaven was built by Nimrod, Genesis 10 verse 8-10, and 11 verse 4. They called the tower Babel, the gate to heaven, but God called it what it was, which was Babel, confusion, for their God confused the language of the people, which forced them to scatter. Nimrod had a plan to weld together and strengthen this evil religious system, and so he married his own mother, who was Semiramis. She was the first deified queen of Babylon and Nimrod was the first deified king. Semiramis was as wicked as her son Nimrod, and as much sold out to Satan and devil worship as did he. After Nimrod's death, for a short time the practices of this counterfeit religion ceased, but Semiramis, the wife of Nimrod, had a brilliant idea of how she could successfully revive her and Nimrod's pagan religion and give it a new form. It was not long after the death of her husband that Semiramis became pregnant. She said that when Nimrod died he went up to the sun, and the sun then became a symbol of Nimrod. She told the people that a ray of the sun had come to her and impregnated her with a child, and that it was actually Nimrod coming back in a reincarnation of the sun god. The child was called Tammuz, and these three were worshipped as the personification of the sun god, and this is where we find the three-in-one false trinity doctrine originated and is where the first three came into existence. This mystery religion was nothing more than Satan worship. According to the book, The Two Babylons, by Alexander Hislop, page 51 reads, "The Trinity got its start in ancient Babylon with Nimrod, Tammuz, and Semiramis. Semiramis demanded worship for both her husband and her son as well as herself. She claimed that her son was both the Father and the Son. Yes, he was God the Father and God the Son, the first divine incomprehensible Trinity. So Semiramis proclaimed that her husband Nimrod was a god, and she as the wife of Nimrod was a goddess. She then announced herself to be the Queen of Heaven and that she should be worshipped as such. She claimed that her spirit was the moon, and when she died she would dwell in the moon, even as Nimrod was already in the sun. What a devilish brainstorm inspired by Satan! Satan's plan was to develop a counterfeit, opposition system of religion to attract worship away from the true God of heaven. This false system had its sacrificial plan just as God had a plan of sacrifice. But Satan's pagan worship required the offering up of human beings, which was often the sons and daughters of the worshippers. A counterfeit holy day was instituted in honor of the sun god, Sunday, and this was designed by Satan to rob God of his peculiar authority as the creator of the universe as designated by his holy day, the Sabbath. Remember, it is the fourth commandment of God or law of Sabbath which remind us our Creator. Also never forget, only this law in the Ten Commandments starts by the word, remember, because God knew many will be lured to forget this law and follow devil's doctrine. Read Exodus 20 verse 8 to 11. So Satan, to make humankind forget their origin, he changed the law which we see even in the first book of the Bible during creation. Have you ever asked yourself why fake theories of origin of mankind has been passed to our children's education system? Alexander Hislop in his book The Two Babylons said, the Tower of Babel was actually the worship of Satan in the form of fire, the sun, and the serpent. However, Satan worship could not be done openly because of the many who still believed in the true God of Noah. So a mystery religion began at Babel where Satan could be worshipped in secret. Alexander Hislop, The Two Babylons, 2nd American ed., Neptune, New Jersey, Loizo's Brothers, 1959. Before his death, Moses foretold that after his death the Jews would disobey and turn to other gods to worship and serve them, Deuteronomy 31 verse 27 and 29. And this is why many times in the Bible, God instructed Israelites to keep his Sabbath forever, to mark a sign between him and his people forever and to remind them who is the true God. Ezekiel 20 verse 20. How did sun worship, and the keeping of paganism day of worshipping sun god entered into Christianity? When the Roman Empire was in power during the earthly life of Jesus and during the early church period, just as Jesus prophesied to his disciples by saying, "The world will hate you because of my name." The early Christians were persecuted by the Romans because of their faith. Satan directed this persecution of the early believers in an effort to stamp out Christianity. But instead of wiping out Christianity, persecution resulted in its growth. As more Christians were put to death, more and more Christians rose up to replace them. Satan saw that his directed persecution of the early believers would not obliterate Christianity, so he moved to attack the church from within instead of from without. Satan devised a plan by which he would lay the foundation for and establish his own counterfeit church. Under Satan's direction, paganism would get a new face. Satan would introduce to the world his own version of a Christian church. After Constantine defeated Maxentius in 312 AD in a battle for the throne of Rome, Satan continued in his clever plan to build his own version of a Christian church. After his ascension to the Roman throne, Constantine issued his Edict of Toleration in 313 AD to stop the persecution of the true believers in Christ. Under Constantine, the Christian church for a time found relief from persecution. Satan had now temporarily stopped his persecution of the Christian church from without, but he would now proceed to attack the church from within. Under Satan's direction, Constantine set up the Council of Nicaea and presided as Summus Pontifex, the official title of a pope. Constantine's job was to mix paganism with a perverted form of Christianity to make his new religious organization look respectable. This was also to strengthen his kingdom by removing boundaries and misunderstanding between Roman pagans and Christians. This mixture of paganism with some of the teaching of Christ was Satan's version of a Christian church. For Satan to fulfill his ministry, Constantine in 321 AD, gave the first order for all Christians to keep the day of the sun, or Sunday, as day of rest, contrary to the commandment of Yahweh, so that pagans can totally share worship with Christians. This marked the beginning of paganism. Beliefs like worship of Semiramis, the Mother of God or Queen of Heaven, entered the Christian church and became baptized as Virgin Mary. The worship of Tammuz or the son of God's son came by backbone of baby Jesus idol. And the birthday of Tammuz, that is 25th December, was baptized as Christmas Day, things which are not in the Bible. This went hand in hand with persecution of those who refused this false Christianity, something which made Sabbath keeping reduce from the face of the world. In fact, this was exactly what was prophesied in the book of Daniel 7 verse 25, when he saw a power which is a mixture of political and religious power rising as a little horn from Rome, making war with the saints of God to destroy the truth. Many changes took place in this Babylonian pagan church. Under Constantine, the pagans were permitted to bring their statues and idols of Semiramis, the Queen of Heaven, and Nimrod, Baal, the sun god, into the church. The names were changed to the Virgin Mary, Queen of Heaven, and Little Jesus, the sun god. For example, is this Catholic image Mary and baby Jesus, or is it Semiramis, the Queen of Heaven, and son Nimrod or Tammuz? The Catholic Church erroneously say that Peter was the first so-called pope of this papal system, but in fact it was really Constantine. So under Constantine as its first pope, the Roman Catholic institution as we know it today had its beginning. The Roman Catholic Church grew in power as the people in Rome were again under the priests and each succeeding pope. Constantine had 50 Bibles made of perverted manuscripts composed by pagan worshippers of Baal from Alexandria.